Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Tales of Herding Gods based on novel. So let's start. Qin Mu's mind trembled hugely as he walked into the courtyard. Imperial Preceptor didn't come over just to talk about interesting stuff. Linger, watch the tea. Hu Linger immediately said, "Young master, our house has no tea, you don't drink tea." Qin Mu laughed and said, "Buy and prepare some tea in the future. Since we have no tea, watch the seats. There are only a few broken stools in Scholar's residence. Where do we have seats?" the little fox grumbled. Qin Mu was slightly awkward. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor waved his hand and smiled. "No need to trouble yourself, I'll just say a few words with Cult Master and I'll leave." Qin Mu's gaze landed on his face. This appearance of Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, the #1 man under gods that awed the world, couldn't be said to be extremely handsome. He only looked ordinary, but there was an indescribable flavor to his face. It was the type that the more you watched it, it grew more and more pleasing in your eyes. His eyes stood out the most on his body. They were eyes that were filled with wisdom and seemed to carry a little sparkle in them, watching over everything in the world to make the wisest decision. To this Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, Qin Mu had a favorable impression and was filled with admiration to this pioneer who broke away from the old conventions. For Eternal Peace Empire to be what it is today, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor has a higher contribution than the Emperor. Taking charge of the reform to reform the army and the government, to break the view of sects, to break the barrier between the three big sects by establishing primary schools, colleges, an imperial college, to set up an institution for scholars, this Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor has made this generation become exceptionally wonderful. Even though he admired him, Qin Mu still had criticism and resentment to this Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was not only gifted by heavens, he was also ruthless. He sent a punitive expedition to Great Ruins, and even though he beat a retreat in the face of difficulties, it didn't mean he won't do it the next time. He suppressed all countries with armed force and annexed them. To uproot those that opposed him, he faked that he was severely injured to bait those sects who had already acknowledged their allegiance to rebel, causing the people to be in a terrible situation. This was not a perfect person. From the beginning to the end, Qin Mu couldn't see what this man was trying to achieve. His breadth of mind was vast and could clearly show tolerance for the whole world, yet he had to extinguish other countries and invade Great Ruins so as to gain more land for Eternal Peace Empire. He clearly had no lust for power, but he didn't hesitate to raise a bloodbath just to eradicate those that opposed him. To Qin Mu, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was like a contradiction. It was very difficult to guess what he was thinking. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was also sizing him up, and after a moment, he said with a gentle voice, "The Sacred Cult Master or Heavenly Saint Cult is unexpectedly young." I was also shocked when I had received news that the Sacred Cult Master was actually the Imperial Academician of our Imperial College. "You didn't seem surprised when you saw me." Qin Mu said, "Heavenly Saint Cult provides education for everyone, irrespective of background. Therefore it's natural that Imperial Preceptor could place a few men among the higher-ups of Heavenly Saint Cult. I'm not surprised Imperial Preceptor could discover my identity so quickly." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor nodded his head. The Sacred Cult Master of Heavenly Saint Cult should have this kind of wisdom. "However, how did you not panic when you saw me? Aren't you afraid I'm here to kill you? If Imperial Preceptor wants to kill me, there's no use even if I panic." Qin Mu said, "If you don't kill me, Heavenly Saint Cult won't rebel. If you kill me, Heavenly Saint Cult will rebel. My life is not as valuable as Heavenly Saint Cult, so Imperial Preceptor doesn't have the need to kill me. Therefore there's no need for me to panic." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor smiled. "Don't be so sure. It's good to be smart, but you might guess wrong if you're overconfident. However, you had indeed moved my heart. You said Heavenly Saint Cult won't rebel. Can you tell me the reason?" Qin Mu said, "We have the same philosophy, so there's no need to rebel." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said, "I've heard the first thing you had done after you became the Cult Master is to establish the 361st Hall, to set up School Hall?" Qin Mu nodded his head. "I'm imitating Imperial Preceptor to reform Heavenly Saint Cult. Heavenly Saint cult was originally an empire draped with the name of a sect. If you imitate me and reform Heavenly Saint cult, won't it become the empire within the empire in my eternal peace? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor asked, if it was during times of peace, you guys would definitely not rebel, but if the world is in chaos, why don't you guys take this chance to rise up and overtake as the orthodox? The reason why Heavenly Saint cult didn't rebel in this period of unrest is not that we don't want to overtake as the orthodox, and is because the current Eternal Peace Empire is a large-scale Heavenly Saint cult. Qin Mu smiled, why do we have to rebel ourselves? In that case, when will you guys rebel? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor became interested and asked. Qin Mu solemnly said, when the time comes for Imperial Preceptor to betray the philosophy of Heavenly Saint cult and no longer to carry out the path of the saint, that's the time Eternal Peace Empire would no longer be Heavenly Saint cult, and my Heavenly Saint cult will definitely rebel. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor gave him a glance while exclaiming, what great guts you have. Qin Mu said, this isn't great guts, I have to tell the truth because Imperial Preceptor will know if I lie. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor slowly walked to the well in the courtyard and said at a speed that was neither too fast nor too slow, you came from great ruins and have no foundation in Heavenly Saint cult. I originally planned to control you and let you borrow my power to establish yourself in Heavenly Saint cult. However, I no longer have this idea. Qin Mu walked to his side and heard Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor continuing, people like you are dangerous. Those who have their own ideas are usually very dangerous and give people a headache since it's very difficult to convince them. Convincing a person is the most strenuous thing, and it would be better off by simply killing them. To convince a cult, that's even more strenuous, and it would be better off to eradicate them. No matter if it's Tao sect or Great Thunderclap Monastery, they have their own philosophies and it's very hard to convince them. It's the same for Heavenly Saint cult. He kept silent for a moment and said, luckily the philosophy of Heavenly Saint cult and the philosophy of Eternal Peace Empire don't conflict. Qin Mu was curious, Imperial Preceptor won't touch Heavenly Saint cult for now, what about Tao sect and Great Thunderclap Monastery? That would depend on what they do. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said seriously, let's see if they could achieve knowledge is action and action is knowledge. If they could carry out their ideas and achieve knowledge is action and action is knowledge, I will do everything in my power to get rid of them. If they can't do it, it isn't hard for them to live on. Qin Mu's heart trembled slightly and asked, what's Imperial Preceptor's philosophy then? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor shook his head, I have no need to tell you. Don't look at what I say, look at what I do. My philosophy is in my actions, this is, knowledge is action and action is knowledge. Young Sacred Cult Master, you still have a long road to go. Qin Mu still couldn't see through this person. Qin Mu, at the current stage, still could not debate over the philosophy with people like Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's eyesight was too high and his knowledge was too vast and too shrewd. His understanding of the paths, skills, and divine arts had reached such a level that people could only look up to him. Qin Mu was not yet at this level. He couldn't think through Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's thought and didn't know if he would be a friend or foe. However, as for now, Qin Mu had to plan for Heavenly Devil Cult's future as the Sacred Cult Master. As for the internal strife in Eternal Peace Empire, our Heavenly Saint Cult would fully support Imperial Preceptor. Qin Mu carefully thought of a way to express his words, however, I need a promise from Imperial Preceptor. After quelling the rebellion, would Imperial Preceptor eradicate our cult and burn the bridges? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor turned to look at him and replied, I won't. Qin Mu gave an expression of inquiry. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said leisurely, I need encouragement. Leaving Heavenly Devil Cult means I'm leaving a sword hanging over my head, spurring me and warning me that I can't make any mistake. He gave a smile, if I'm too strong, even I made a mistake, what people could do to me. I need a power which can kill me when I lose my Tao heart. Heavenly Saint Cult is very good. If I go against your philosophy, I'll be waiting for you to kill me. Qin Mu was slightly frightened. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor took a step and left. Qin Mu let out a murky breath and felt his hairs almost exploding out. There was only one thought in his mind, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor isn't a human. Non-human. As long as it's a human, it would have 7 emotional states and 6 desires, it would have thoughts of selfishness. Yet eternal peace imperial preceptor didn't have 7 emotional states, 6 desires, and totally no thoughts of selfishness. Without these things, he was a human no more. Or perhaps, he could be called a saint. Could eternal peace imperial preceptor be a saint? He composed himself and drove away the thoughts that plagued him. At this moment, the dragon Qin spoke with a low and muffled voice. This person is very terrifying. He stood here and I could see him, however I couldn't feel him. Qin Mu was slightly stunned. He did not use green heaven's eyes to take a look at eternal peace imperial preceptor and lost a chance. He had once used heaven's eyes to look at village chief and he saw a magnificent and imposing god that had an intact body. If he looked at eternal peace imperial preceptor, what would he see? Outside Scholar's residence, Qin Feiyue was bowing and waiting outside as eternal peace imperial preceptor walked over and said, "Let's return." Qin Feiyue didn't dare to say much, and while they were walking, eternal peace imperial preceptor suddenly said, "Grand Chancellor has good judgment." Qin Feiyue smiled. Ji Yulinwan might be not bad, but after being sealed in ice for 200 years and not moving forward, I'm afraid he might be behind times. I meant the other Grand Chancellor. Eternal peace imperial preceptor turned his head back and said, "The successor he has chosen is very good and showing great promise. However, he's very like me and it made me slightly uncomfortable seeing this person as I kept thinking of killing him." Qin Feiyue didn't understand what he was saying. Eternal peace imperial preceptor walked further and further away while muttering, "I hate looking in the mirror. The me in the mirror is never as perfect as the me in my ideals." In Scholar's residence, Qin Mu could finally be at ease. His unity technique was yet perfected and he had to calm his heart down to comprehend it attentively, perfecting it as much as he could. Eternal peace imperial preceptor gave him a very big impact. A person who fights for his ideals always gives a charm that makes people admire from the bottom of their heart. As for eternal peace imperial preceptor saying that leaving heavenly devil cult meant leaving a sword hanging above his head, to achieve this step it was very difficult. Even with the combined power of the entire heavenly devil cult, they couldn't achieve this step. Since imperial preceptor is so heroic, we have to fulfill his wish. Qin Mu executed his technique and slowly walked in the courtyard. He comprehended the unity technique he had created from the foundation of Overlord Body 3 elixir technique in detail and sorted them out. He also took out great educational heavenly devil scriptures from time to make some referencing. After quite some time, Qin Mu let out a murky breath and his speed suddenly increased. He sprinted frantically throughout the whole mountain and executed the unity technique which he had comprehended out. His body flitted back and forth the mountain like flickering light and passing shadows. Even though Qin Mu was sprinting at a flying speed, his brain was still continuing to think, becoming unprecedentedly active. Even though they didn't talk much, this meeting with eternal peace imperial preceptor had made his brain sink into a stimulated state. Meeting an unmatched talent would excite oneself, give pressure to oneself and raise oneself up. Even though it was only a normal conversation to eternal peace imperial preceptor, it had an extraordinary significance to Qin Mu. Just by standing in front of this legendary figure, he would require a huge amount of courage, and while talking to him, he would need to set all his wisdom into motion. By conversing with intelligent people, it would fill oneself with wisdom, and if one kept company with ordinary people, they would become ordinary as well. Qin Mu made use of this opportunity where he was conversing with imperial preceptor to let his wisdom be at his tip-top state, taking this chance to perfect unity technique. Suddenly, his footsteps slowed down and his vital chi circulated through the new and improved Overlord Body 3 elixir technique. The current Overlord Body 3 elixir technique was the unity technique he had perfected, which had the good points of numerous techniques from great educational heavenly devil scriptures integrated into it. The original Overlord Body 3 elixir technique had no attributes and was solely used to execute other techniques and skills. Its power couldn't be compared to the techniques which came with their own divine arts. For example, Thunderclap 8 Strikes requires Rulai's Mahayana Sutra to be able to unleash its full power. Secrets of Moving Rain requires Black Tortoise Water Control technique to execute it. Secrets of Rolling Thunder and Flames requires Vermilion Bird Fire Control technique to master it, only then could the power of the thunder and flames be completely unleashed. Meanwhile, Overlord Body 3 Elixir Technique was a technique and didn't come with spells or divine arts. Comprehending Unity Technique this time, Qin Mu had used Overlord Body 3 Elixir Technique as the foundation to comprehend the teaching of the woodcutter on the rock. He aroused all kinds of characteristics from Overlord Body 3 Elixir Technique to allow it to unleash the power of all kinds of skills. Overlord Body 3 Elixir Technique had no attributes, so it couldn't be used for body refinement. It also had no divine arts coming with it, therefore, it couldn't turn into powerful attacks. However, comprehending Unity Technique this time, Qin Mu had finally solved this difficult problem. And now, Overlord Body 3 Elixir Technique had become even more all-embracing. By using the Overlord Body 3 Elixir Technique improved by him, the spells, sword skills, battle techniques executed were no weaker than using the coherent technique to execute them. This was the so-called Unity Technique of Great Educational Heavenly Devil Scriptures. Every cult master of Heavenly Devil cult had their own unique Unity Technique, and the young patriarch's original intention was to let Qin Mu cultivate both Unity Technique and Overlord Body 3 Elixir Technique at the same time after comprehending it. Even though it might be slower, he could attain the advantages of both techniques simultaneously. But he never thought Qin Mu would directly make improvements on Overlord Body 3 Elixir Technique instead of comprehending the technique that was built from the foundation of Great Educational Heavenly Devil Scriptures. Qin Mu didn't know if this was good or bad, or if it was the correct decision. Ever since he was young, he had cultivated Overlord Body 3 Elixir Technique and was most familiar with this technique, thus he had subconsciously changed Overlord Body 3 Elixir Technique into Unity Technique. The most crucial point was that he had resolved the inadequateness of Overlord Body 3 Elixir Technique on body refinement, spells, and battle techniques. He executed the improved Overlord Body 3 Elixir Technique, and now, Overlord Body 3 Elixir Technique had fused 9 transformations, 3 conditions mystery technique, the body refinement technique of Great Educational Heavenly Devil Scriptures. This technique was a top-notch body refinement technique in Great Educational Heavenly Devil Scriptures. Qin Mu had all along been envious of the body refinement techniques of the battle techniques school. However, Old Ma, Butcher, and Cripple had not taught him techniques of this area, therefore, he could only find it from Great Educational Heavenly Devil Scriptures. As he executed the technique, Qin Mu instantly felt the extraordinary points of the improved Overlord Body 3 Elixir Technique. His vital chi was circulating rapidly and permeating into his skin, muscles, tendons, hairs, and bone marrow. In the past, his Overlord Body 3 Elixir Technique had a simpler path of circulation in his body, and now his Overlord Body 3 Elixir Technique has reached into all parts of his body. Other than refining his body, the new Overlord Body 3 Elixir Technique also refines his soul, his chi, being extremely superior. Qin Mu started to walk slower and slower as he gradually stopped. He experienced the inadequate points in his technique with detail and amended them. The basic structure of his Unity Technique had already been determined, and all that's lacking was the minor details. He was very lacking in body refinement and soul refinement. Now he only felt like his body was a dried land that had not seen rain for half a year, which was currently absorbing all the moisture and nutrients from the rainwater frantically. Great Educational Heavenly Devil Scriptures 9 Transformations 3 Conditions was the 9 transformations of vital chi and corporeal body, and the 3 conditions of bones in the body. The first condition was bones inseparably close, the second condition was body like iron, and the third condition was like mountain. Now he was only at the stage of the first transformation and first condition. Unknowingly, half a day had passed by, and Qin Mu slowly came to Floor of Heavenly Records. In front of Floor of Heavenly Records, a secretary passed by coincidentally and gave him a glance. His face immediately changed and he cried out, "Academician Qin, you better recuperate yourself, otherwise you won't live for much longer." Qin Mu was bewildered and didn't understand what he meant. Suddenly a wind blew and he instantly felt giddy and collapsed. Crap! Qin Mu was astonished and immediately raised his hands. Looking at his emaciated arms, he touched his face and could only feel his thin skin that was clinging onto his cheekbones. The clothes that were originally very fitting had now become slightly loose. Only now then did he notice he had become terrifying skinny in 4 hours, like a person made from firewood. Not only that, his corporeal body was also exhausted. Furthermore, As he executed Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique, the speed of this kind of exhaustion increased exponentially. When the energy in his corporeal body got exhausted completely, his death would be due. He only focused on perfecting Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique and cultivating the skills of body refinement and soul refinement. However, he didn't pay attention to his body and only knew now that he was burnt out. The new Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique has quite a serious hidden danger. The cultivation speed is too fast and I've forgotten that body refinement uses the energy in my own body. When the energy in my body is exhausted, it would create an extremely heavy burden on my body. He was already at 5 elements realm and had a dense cultivation. However, cultivating the new Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique to refine his body and soul, the energy in his body couldn't even last for hours. Qin Mu immediately stopped executing Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique and let his mind clear up. His mind was working frantically and he troubled himself over how to make a medicine for his body as he sprinted towards Scholar's residence. Qin Mu rushed into his own room to grab money before sprinting towards Imperial College, leaving behind the little fox and the dragon Qilin bewildered. He bought the herbs from the warehouse and didn't have time to return to his residence, thus he started refining the medicine on the way back. He executed his dazzling hand techniques and dazzled people's eyes as he refined the medicine. Before he even reached Scholar's residence, he had succeeded in refining a furnace of pills. When these spirit pills were just done, there was actually a faint Buddha voice as if there was a Buddha in each pill chanting their prayers. The moment these spirit pills were done, Qin Mu opened his mouth to suck the pills in a series. He catalyzed the medicinal energy as he rushed towards his courtyard, and the moment he reached the door, he suddenly felt dizzy and collapsed into the courtyard. Hu Linga cried out and immediately scrambled over. Qin Mu only felt at ease when he saw Hu Linga at his side before he fainted. "Help me catalyze the medicinal energy." Before he even finished his words, he fainted. When Qin Mu woke up groggily, he felt that the medicinal energy of the spirit pills in his stomach had already been catalyzed and was circulating a warm flow towards 4 limbs and 100 bones like a scalding great furnace. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief and felt the lingering fear. The United Overlord Body 3 Elixir was good but also extremely dangerous. If he didn't take the chance when he was still conscious to refine spirit pills as a remedy, the consequences would be inconceivable and he would probably have died. If I can't supplement the energy exhausted by my body when I refine my body and soul with Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique, I would probably die. Qin Mu opened his eyes and laid there silently. He calculated to himself, if I want to fix this technique, it would be very difficult. It involves me to mobilize my entire body, and if I fix it, it would probably take an extremely long amount of time. In that case, I'd better not cultivate it. Hu Linga stood at the side and looked at him anxiously. The dragon Qilin squatted outside the window and wanted to push his head into the window to see if his meal master was still alive. However, his head was too big and the window could only allow one of his eyes in. He couldn't squeeze into the house at all. Qin Mu sat up and found out that he was lying on the bed. It should be the little fox who had used her demon wind to send him to the bed. He smiled. "There's no need to worry, I'm already fine. When I completely catalyze these medicinal energies, my body will recover." Hu Linga let out a sigh of relief and said, "Young master has scared me to death. In just a short time, you have become so starved and skinny. When you collapsed earlier, I was worried you couldn't get up anymore." Qin Mu catalyzed the medicinal energy at ease and the medicinal energy spread out and was absorbed by his body. He won't die for now, but his body was still in a state of deficiency. This was the inner deficiency caused by refining his body and soul. His body and soul may be stronger, but there were no nutrients to replenish him. It was like a ship flying in the sky. If only a small furnace was provided as motive power for the ship would definitely fall from the sky and shatter into pieces. That was what had just happened to him. Refining his soul had exhausted his spirit, and refining his body had exhausted the energy in his body. The spirit pills he had refined was to replenish his spirit and not allow his spirit to be completely exhausted. However, his body was still in a severe starving state. Now that his spirit had completely recovered, his body was still terrifyingly skinny with his skin clinging onto his bone. Qin Mu stood up and asked, "Linga, is there anything to eat? I'm very hungry now." Does young master want to eat the green bull? The huge eyeball of the dragon Qin outside the window rotated as he said in glee, there's a wild bull in the back mountain, how about I catch and roast it for young master to eat? Once this dragon Qin was no longer hungry, he was full of evil tricks and always wanted to take revenge on the green bull. Hu Linga smiled, please wait a moment, young master. Big dragon, let us get some food for young master. After she had said it, she ran out of the house like a wisp of smoke and brought the dragon Qin out of Scholar's residence. Sister Linga, where are we going to find food? The dragon Qin asked in bewilderment. Do you know how to swim? Hu Linga asked, there are a few huge fish in Jade Dragon Lake which are several yards long. I've been eyeing them for quite a long time. The dragon Qin replied in glee, I've also eyed them for quite a long time, but it wasn't good for me to make a move when old master didn't give the command. Don't worry, I'm also very good at swimming. I can stay underwater for several days and not come up to breathe. Hu Linga was greatly delighted and came to Jade Dragon Lake with him. There was a daoist opposite the lake and revealed a questioning expression when he saw them, but before he could make an inquiry, he saw the dragon Qin diving into the lake. The expression of the daoist changed hugely and he immediately shouted, that lion, you can't bathe in the lake. That fox, stop the lion. Hu Linga immediately said, big dragon, faster, faster. The dragon Qin dived into the lake and stirred up waves. On the lake, the daoist immediately hurried over with a horsetail whisk in his hand. Shaking it towards the lake, the numerous threads scattered down like a giant fishing net, trying to catch that dragon Qin in the lake. Rumble. The surface of the lake trembled violently and the daoist gave a grunt. Only the handle of his horsetail whisk was left and he knew he wasn't a match for this dragon Qin, thus he immediately turned and ran while shouting, Demon, you guys dare to bathe in the Jade Dragon Lake of the royal family and even dare to beat me, just you wait to be executed. Not long later, the scholars of Imperial College walked out from Hall of Pyongyang and towards Scholars' residence. Today, it was Daoist Ling Yun teaching, and what Hall of Pyongyang taught was the path of cultivating qi. Daoist Ling Yun was widely known for his profound cultivation, cultivating his qi into the level of Pyongyang. Before the numerous scholars could even return to Scholars' residence, they all stopped and looked back in astonishment, freezing on the spot. They only saw a ridiculously huge red fish flying through the air. There were red scales on the body of the red fish and on its head were dragon's horns. This was because after absorbing the qi of the 9 dragons here for many years, the fish head had started to turn into a dragon. It was like a half-fish half-dragon that had a mouth filled with razor-sharp teeth, looking extremely fierce. However, now this huge fish was being restrained by a few vital qi and couldn't move at all. A demon wind was carrying this huge fish towards Scholars' residence, causing all the scholars to be dumbfounded. Behind this huge fish was an even larger dragon Qin that was running and shaking off the water on his body at the same time. There was also a white-colored fox that was standing on the head on the dragon Qin, raising demon wind to carry the huge fish. That dragon Qin rushed into Scholars' residence and threw the huge fish into the courtyard of Academician Qin with a thump. The little fox then scampered into the courtyard and shut the doors. A scholar muttered, that fish seems to be one of the fish kings in Jade Dragon Lake. It's called red dragon carp and it's an imperial cuisine that the emperor treats the civil and military officials during the New Year feast. A scholar beside was also in a daze as he muttered, last year, my old father was indebted to the emperor's benevolence and had a taste of the fish soup on the imperial dragon feast. He came back exclaiming endlessly and even kept telling me it was a worldly delicacy until now. However, that red dragon carp was only a foot long. This one. Before the other scholars came around to their senses, they saw the door to Qin Mu's room opening up again. This white fox scampered out again and looked around before running to a mulberry tree. She then spat out a demon wind and chopped down the mulberry tree. She then controlled the demon wind to turn into curved blades to chop the mulberry tree into firewood before bringing them back into the courtyard. The little fox took a few trips and even carried the trunk of the tree back into the courtyard. Billowing smoke then came surging out from Qin Mu's courtyard. It was obvious that the little fox and the dragon Qin was currently raising a fire to roast the fish. The scholars looked at one another and Chu Ting muttered, that's the ambition tree planted by monk Qing Shan, the directorate of Hall of Zhuoyang. It's a tree planted to motivate scholars to seek knowledge. Not long after, the delicious fragrance spread throughout scholars' residence. Saliva started flowing out from all of the scholar's mouth. The fox and dragon Qin this abandoned person had brought over, killed the fish king in the drinking grounds of the royal family before chopping down the ambition tree that monk Qin Shan planted to use it to raise fire for roasting the fish. This act of recklessness, they trying to rebel? Young master, how's the taste? The youth and the fox's conversation came over from Qin Mu's courtyard and they heard Qin Mu saying, "Still okay, it's just that it wasn't marinated, thus the flavor wasn't soaked through. It's best to marinate a fish for a whole day so it would be crisp, fragrant and tender when you eat it. This fish is pretty huge, where did you get it from?" "From the lake." "So I see. I once fished with Grand Chancellor beside the lake and saw a few huge red fish. However, we only caught a 9-dragon carp which was quite small. However, the flavor of the soup was very delicious. It's pretty good of you to use mulberry wood to roast the fish, it gives off sweet and sour fruity taste of the mulberry." All the scholars in scholars' residence had an expression of rejoice in his upcoming misfortune. Chu Ting snickered, "Academician Qin is dead meat." In the courtyard, Qin Mu prodded the thick wooden skewer to rotate the red dragon carp and below was a vigorous flame which was the mulberry flames controlled by the dragon Qin, roasting the huge fish tender on the inside and crisp on the outside. The dragon Qin controlled the fire to let the heat seep into the meat and bones of the huge fish. The mulberry wood gave off water vapor, thus there was a smoky flavor. Hu Linga then controlled the wind to let some of the smoky flavors enter the meat of the fish. They then stuffed numerous mulberry leaves, onions, and ginger into the stomach of the fish. In the stomach of the fish was tender fish oil which sizzled when it dripped onto the fire as they roasted the fish. The fish oil gave off a smoky smell when burned, raising their appetite hugely. When the entire fish was cooked, Hu Linga immediately controlled her wind blades to slice off the meat from the fish belly. The meat here was the plumpest. Her knife work was very good as each slice of fish was precise. At the same time, she also controlled the plate to let the slices of fish fall onto the plate. Each slice of fish was crystal clear and the slices looked like pieces of tender jade white fat from mutton. Qin Mu suppressed the fire and lowered the intensity of the fire. The human, the fox, and the dragon Qin sat beside the bonfire and ate the roasted fish. Qin Mu's heart slightly moved when he remembered a weird technique in great educational heavenly devil scriptures which was called spirit returning pill great supplement technique. He immediately executed his vital qi to circulate this technique to speed up his digestion. Soon his stomach became empty, thus his mouth continued with eating the roasted fish around the bonfire. The name of this technique was weird and the technique itself was even weirder. The main method of cultivation for spirit returning pill great supplement technique relied mainly on eating. This technique could transform any food that reached the stomach into energy or even vital qi for the body. This helped to strengthen one's body and raise their cultivation, thus it was called spirit returning pill great supplement technique. Now that Qin Mu's body was so skinny, he needed to replenish the energy he had exhausted in his body. Now that there was a ridiculously huge roasted fish in front of him, he could use this technique to supplement his body. This fish was a unique breed after all. Living in Imperial College for so many years, it had absorbed the qi of the 9 dragons, thus it was firstly delicious and secondly, its meat was nutritious. Now Qin Mu's body was exhausted. By executing this weird technique, the food in his stomach was immediately digested into nutrients which were absorbed by his whole body. His shriveled muscles also gradually bulged, and even though it was very slow, Qin Mu reckoned his muscles would grow back if he finished eating this 10 yards long fish. Hu Linga couldn't stuff herself any longer, and the dragon Qin used to eat scarlet fire spirit pills, thus he didn't like the fish meat very much and stopped after a few mouthfuls. Only Qin Mu continued to sit there eating to his heart's content. Suddenly a knock came from outside and Hu Linga dragged her bulging tummy and ran to open the door. Wei Yong walked in with his nose twitching and smiled. "It's just the time for lunch and I smell a fragrance coming from Brother Qin's place, thus I've come to ask for food." The stone dragon lion at the mountain gate has come to life? Little fox, how did you get even fatter than me from eating?" Hu Linga gave a snort. Wei Yong then looked at Qin Mu, who was sitting beside the bonfire, and cried out in astonishment, "Little fox, did you borrow Qin Mu's male force to strengthen your feminine health by sleeping with him? Brother Qin? How did he become so skinny?" Hu Linga was furious and anxious. "I haven't got a chance to do it." "Don't speak nonsense. If you didn't do it, who did?" Wei Yong was bewildered. "I knew that there would definitely be a problem when Brother Qin asked where the cat house was the moment he entered the capital city. Your body has become unable to tolerate as expected, am I right?" Qin Mu didn't know whether to laugh or cry and invited him to sit down. Wei Yong didn't hold back and tore off a huge chunk of fish meat. He tasted it, and the meat was so slippery that it slid straight down his throat, nearly causing his tongue to slip into his stomach as well. He couldn't help being surprised and delighted as he exclaimed in admiration. He then spoke with a low and muffled voice, "The directorates are all not very pleased when you haven't attended their lessons for the past few months. They said stuff like Imperial Academician being ignorant and incompetent, that the Emperor shouldn't have raised your ranks. That's right, what happened to you? How did you become so skinny? I had made a mistake in my cultivation and almost lost my life." Qin Mu said, "Lucky I discovered just in time, and now I'm replenishing my energy back." Wei Yong smiled, "You have pretty big guts as well, to actually cultivate recklessly. I'm also an imperial scholar now and have some position in Duke's Manor. What pills do you need? I can grab some from Duke's Manor to let you supplement your body." Qin Mu shook his head and said, "When I finish eating this fish, my body would be able to recover and there would be no need for me to consume spirit pills. Do you know? Chancellor Ba Shan and Grand Chancellor Ji Yu had fought each other and got each other all blooded outside the capital city. Even the Emperor was alarmed." Wei Yong had a burp and said, "My father went to mediate in the quarrel along with other first-ranking high officials, and only then did they stop fighting. I went out to make some inquiries and heard that the Emperor had called them both over to give them a harsh scolding. Only when I finished asking around, I came back to freeload a meal here. Before you came back, Chancellor Ba Shan had found me and said he wanted to bring me out for an experience, I reckon. Brother Wei, don't talk while eating." Not long after, Wei Yong, this chubby youth, had grown even bigger and he couldn't eat anymore. However, he still saw Qin Mu continuing to eat heartily, and with each piece of fish going into his stomach actually didn't bulge at all. Wei Yong was amazed. When he saw Qin Mu's skinny body expanding out as if he was filled with air, he gave a pinch and found there were all muscles in his body, making him even more astonished. When this huge fish had been completely finished, only a huge fish bone that spanned up to 10 yards long was left. Qin Mu's body had recovered to normal and seemed to be even stronger than before, making Wei Yong incessantly envious. "Where did you buy such a delicious fish from?" Wei Yong's mouth was still itching for more, but he just couldn't eat anymore, thus he asked, "I have never seen such a huge fish in the market of the capital city, nor have I ever eaten such a delicious fish. I definitely have to buy a few more and give special attention to them." Qin Mu said indifferently, "Fished out from Jade Dragon Lake." Wei Yong stared with his eyes wide open and asked immediately, "Which Jade Dragon Lake?" "The one in our Imperial College." Wei Yong gulped and asked with a trembling voice, "Our Imperial College's Jade Dragon Lake? This fish is one of the fish kings in Jade Dragon Lake." Qin Mu looked at Hu Linga and Hu Linga nodded her head. "I asked Big Dragon to catch a huge one. This one that he caught was the biggest." Wei Yong's expression turned ashen and he saw the mulberry leaves and branches that were scattered throughout the entire courtyard. He then asked again with a trembling voice, "When I came back just now, I had seen the ambition tree in Scholar's residence left with a stump. Could it be? That mulberry tree is called Ambition Tree." Hu Linga said in astonishment, "The tree even has a name." Wei Yong's face turned ghastly white and he walked shakily and muttered in a daze, "Chopping down Ambition Tree to use it to roast the fish king of Jade Dragon Palace. Even if I've multiple heads, it still wouldn't be enough for the Emperor to chop off. I've never been here, never been here." This video will end here.